Yeah. So we've been doing multiple AMAs once a month at least. Started off with talking about what PhD is, how to get, how to address PhD problems, pick PhD problems. Then we went on to do an AMA with Google, Microsoft, and IBM heads, talking about how to get a job in industry. So we've been doing once a month, and so today we also have interesting topic about how to convert your PhD thesis into a startup. So for those of you who, I don't know how many of you have actually participated in PhD Clinic, but this is a platform where you can actually spend an hour with a mentor, and big list of mentors. Mentors are getting added to this PhD Clinic program where you can actually get a 1 hour slot, interact with them about your PhD work. It's very specific against the AMA type where it's slightly broader. So this slide and the next slide is giving you a list of all the mentors and the topics that they work on. So for quick access, the URL is also here on the slide. So you can see, I think, faculty, there are some faculty who are also sitting outside India who are helping with this mentorship, but we have faculties from many IITs, IISc, and companies also. Industry mentors are also there. We crossed 100 students about a month and a half back. So it's actually pretty nice to see the idea in about 3 months, we crossed 100 PhD clinic sessions. And recently we also kicked off the Anveshan Setu Fellowship. Early this month, we announced the Anveshan Setu Fellows, 37 students across the country having opportunity to visit a faculty of their interest, and mentors across different institutes evaluated the applications that we got, and we have ACM India is supporting about 37 students to visit their campus. Depending on the COVID situation, we'll actually see when they actually physically do the visit, but the idea is to get an immersive experience, spending time with the faculty. We are hoping that this travel will happen at least by end of this year, early next year. So we've kept it open. But I think if you're a PhD student, I think these are great opportunities for PhD Clinic and Anveshan Setu, where you get an experience from faculty. So what is today? Today's session is about continuing the theme of helping PhD students itself, how to build a company with your PhD thesis. We have Dr. Anand Deshpande, who is a founder and the chairman and MD of Persistent Systems. And we have sent a long bio of Anand. He's an undergrad from IIT Kharagpur, MS and PhD from Indiana University. And recently we saw a post, I'm sure many of you would have seen. Recently we saw a post from Anand saying 30th anniversary of Persistence. And that kind of gives a sense of his depth in Indian industry, understanding of it. He himself has done a PhD, so he understands what it takes to do a PhD and running a company, all of that. So it's thanks Anand, for taking time and doing this. It's amazing to have you. We have a great set of questions also, which we received from people. So what we did was we sent out a form where interested participants actually signed up and sent the questions. I've already shared the questions with Anand. We have curated some questions which will be addressed in this session. And that's me, in case I'm PK, I'm a faculty at IIIT Delhi. So thanks for sharing your questions. We have curated some questions. So what I would like to also mention, one of the things is there were some very specific questions, which is how to narrow down your thesis problem, how to do literature review. I'm working on quantum computing. Can you help me create a company around quantum computing? So all that, we kind of kept it aside. I think those are not the kind of questions that we can actually take up, unfortunately, in such a session. This is going to be slightly broader, attacking a bigger view of how to convert your PhD thesis. I would highly recommend, if your questions are not answered in the session, please explore the PhD Clinic option. Feel free to type. Yeah.
I can also respond to mails.
Yeah, sure. So please use
questions. Send email.
Yep. Please use the chat window. I will moderate and manage the chat window. Anand will concentrate on the content delivery. Please use the chat window to post any questions, comments. And we also have the slides already made public. So I will actually put this URL in the chat right now. So you can actually have access to the slides as and when Anand is speaking also. Thanks again for joining. Hoping for a very exciting session. Anand, floor is yours.
Yes, I think the way we are going to do this, PK, is that more than me presenting, we are
Yes.
going to have a conversation.
Yes.
And, you are sort of, okay, let me get my deck in. And
So I just posted the slides link also. So slides is here.
yes, so you guys can have a look at the slides, download them, and feel free to use them. I'm not planning to run you through the slides today, partly because it's just too many. And I think if you have the slides, you don't need me to read them for you. Very briefly, PK mentioned, but I want to point out a few things here. One is that, yes, I did a PhD, but that was 30 plus years back. So it's kind of not terribly relevant for you. But I've been quite actively involved in the entrepreneurship network, and I've been working with the Asra Foundation, where we have supported more than 100,000 small businesses. I do a lot of sessions with people on scaling businesses and getting people to become entrepreneurs, and that's really a mission that I'm on. And I'm going to share a few of those things. And for today's session, this is really what I had in mind. And PK, if you think this is a good starting point, let me share that. Let me congratulate all of you for your success, for being here where you are. You're doing a PhD. I want to convince you that your skills are very valuable. And then, I'll give you a glimpse of what it takes to build a startup and give you some tools that you can use. And of course, we'll answer any questions that you might have. So, do you want to ask any questions, PK, to start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So I thought I would like you to do that slide. Yeah. So I think the first question that broadly that has come up with the discussion, and this is come up even with the questions that I've interacted with PhD students. Why PhD students should think about entrepreneurship itself, right? PhD is generally a very immersive thing, or it takes time. We are very, very narrowly focused on a problem. Why do you think, as a PhD student, we should actually look at entrepreneurship as an option? Generally, we are given option as when we finish PhD, academia, industry, right? That's the general thing that ends up coming. So why do you? What's your take on thinking of entrepreneurship as an option?
Yes. So I think, having been an entrepreneur for 30 years, I must admit and tell you that the PhD is one of the best trainings you can get for being an entrepreneur. And the reason I say this is because, you get an opportunity to explore innovation. And the key things that a PhD demonstrates is the fact that you understand what focus means. You are able to focus on a single point, problem that you're working on for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So that's a skill that is very important. Most of the undergrads and people who do just MBAs tend to be floating all over the place. That depth of knowledge, that clear understanding of what needs to get done in the context of the overall research context, that skill is super important for an entrepreneur. And I think this is the skill that you all have really acquired. And the fact that you understand that failure is part of our day-to-day stuff. So my daughter does a PhD in biology. She says 95% of my experiments fail, right? So I understand what failure is, and I know how to come back and make sure that my next attempt works better. And this is a skill that none of the masters, or certainly none of the undergrads understand, that they're all chasing grades. And this is the skill that you guys have learned. And this is super important. And I think that's what makes you privileged. And I must go on and say a further thing, that I think all of you guys who are doing PhDs are privileged people. You are the guys who understand and have invested in technology and building real solutions. And it is kind of shameful if you're looking for jobs. You should not be sucking off those useless jobs that people on the mere mortal undergrads should go after. You should be the job creators. You are the drivers of the economy and the engine. So stop thinking about jobs, become job creators. And that's really my mission to everyone as well. I think it's anybody who can, who has some basic senses should not be sucking jobs out. We don't have enough jobs. They should be creating jobs. And this is what I'm going to tell you how to do that. And an entrepreneurship and a small business is to start with, and then which grows, is really the job creator in some sense. So for example, I'm really proud of the fact that even at Persistent, we have 13,000 employees. And over the years, we have had more than 35,000 employees who have gone through it. So job creation. has been a big thing. We have had more than 500 employees who have gone and created their own startups. So they created further jobs as well. So it's about job creation and driving the economy rather than just being a job seeker. So this is really my, sort of passionate requirement or suggestion to you, that stop sucking jobs, just create jobs, forget about jobs, make new ones. Okay, is that making sense?
Yeah. So I don't know when you want me to stop and probe you with more questions, but whenever you stop and ping me, I will come back with some
So
questions if
you,
you want.
you interrupt me as well. We'll have our
Yeah.
conversation far more
Sure.
exciting.
Sure.
But okay, let's start with the
Yeah.
next thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was wondering about this job creation, right? You seem to be very passionate about job creation, but if you just think about PhD, at least PhD students in India to start with, right? Because that's the audience that we're talking about. So I think this general thing of fear of failure is very high, extremely high, right? And today the opportunities for post PhD is also slightly better, I think, before compared to, let's take 10, 15 years before, where there was less of research labs in India, less of industry jobs. Today, IBM and Google's actually recruit many of our PhDs from India, right? So why should I try when I know that there's a path like IBM or a Google or a Microsoft or even a faculty profile in front of me?
See, again, everyone has to make their own choice. That's what's right to them. But as an entrepreneur, I've been one. I can tell you the excitement and the mission and the excitement that you get in running your own business is not matched in any job that you can do. Okay? Even though it's just not the same. So, if I had another opportunity, I would again be an entrepreneur, whether or not.
Yes.
And the PhD has been good training for me, I must admit. Okay, I don't think my PhD was a waste, even though I don't use any of it in my day-to-day stuff. I built a network. I've connected with a lot of people, and it has really helped me in the thing. And when you talk about failures, actually, I think PhD students are taking high risks in some sense. PhD is not a cost-effective degree; it's a high-risk degree. There's a good chance your research may not go anywhere, and you may not get a degree, but you still get at it. So this is PhDs have demonstrated this. I think the biggest challenge that the PhD students have is the mindset block.
Yes.
And the mindset is that if I'm not Shah Jahan, how can I build the Taj Mahal? That's the mindset problem. So if I'm a PhD student, how can I go start a business, right? Who told you this is somebody who is kind of all over the place, right? Your profs have never done it, your other people have not done it, so how can I ever do it, right? So there is this whole mindset block that is holding us back from thinking that, oh, if I'm a PhD, I need to be this, this, and this. The way I look at PhD is it's a degree that gives you certain training. It is not the end of your life. It's just the beginning of demonstration of a certain training around focus, context, and persistence. So that's really what it is.
Yeah, please continue with your slides. Yeah, sorry.
So next part, I'm sure this is a question you would ask me, and this is what has been asked by a lot of people. So yeah, I did my PhD. I got this great problem that I solved in my thesis. Now, how do I convert my thesis into a business? Yeah. Well, it's a good question, but the point is the PhD was a purpose of the PhD was to get the degree, you got it. Now there's a process to find out if that PhD is going to be useful for the customer and it's really going to get in there. So there are lots of ways people have done this. I'm going to share with you a methodology, a process of how this needs to be done. And this is broadly what I'm going to share with you is from 4 different schools of thought which are related to each other, but they are very much what people are talking about when it comes to how do you identify if your problem is right, and how do you go about creating that problem statement that is appropriate for you. And this whole methodology is referred to as lean startup. And I'm going to share with you the work that I'm sharing with you today in this deck is from Steve Blank, Eric Rice, Alexander or Alex Osterwilder, and Clayton Christensen. These guys are very well known in this area, and there is enough books that these guys have written. And part of the reason why I have this slide deck for you today is that I wanted you to get a chance to have the references that are necessary for this kind of a presentation that you can carry with you. So I have books that are there and images and other things. You should follow on them. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview of what this whole lean startup means. By no means can I give you like the whole spiel in 15, 20 minutes, which is what I have for this segment. So you have to take that as a starting point for conversation rather than as an end point. So a lot of the lean stuff that you hear about is not lean meaning it's skinny. Lean means is a manufacturing process where it is all about reduction of waste. So lean is a whole concept of how do you reduce waste. That's what it comes in from. A lot of it came from Toyota and how Toyota manufactured their cars and how they created this whole Japanese style of how production was happening. And the Toyota production system is very well known. And Taiichi Ono is the key architect and a lot about it. And Edward Deming talked about some of these similar things. And a couple of things you need to understand is this is a process, not a destination. So you have to, it's a methodology that you keep tracking every time. Every time you reduce waste, try again, reduce waste, keep reducing waste as you go along. Now, what this was done was some of these strategies were leveraged by Steve Blank on one side. And Steve Blank is a very important person in this whole startup ecosystem. He is an adjunct professor of entrepreneurship at Stanford. He lectures at the UC Berkeley Haas thing. And he has several books, but these two are very classic books in this topic, The 4 Steps to the Epiphany and the Startup Owner's Manual. And he has a lean launchpad class. And one of his students is Eric Rice, who I'm going to talk about in a minute later on. But Eric Rice is the guy who sort of wrote these books on lean startup. And one of the things that is mentioned by Steve Blank in terms of how you build this lean startup is first, you make your business model in a canvas, which I'm going to show you. Then you focus on customer development and agile engineering. Together, all of this stuff is put together as a lean startup. So Osterwalder is the guy who wrote this business model generation book, which is very famous. And it's very nicely done. And many offshoots of this book are around in various forms. There's a business model for you, business model for teams, testing business models, and invincible companies. These are all very beautiful books worth reading. They're very nice to read as well. And business model generation is used consistently by everyone. So what does it mean? So he has created this one pager to take a look at how your business model can be defined. So you have your thesis and all that, but how do you go about saying, well, is it going to be a business or not? So you have a model in which you define how the business works. And I'm going to show you how it works. So the way you look at it is you start with customer segment. So first thing you ask is, all right, you are building a business. Who is the customer that is going to buy from me on this particular thing? You start from the customer. Now within the customer also, you cannot use the whole world as a customer. So you have to convert it into saying that I'm going to look for customers who have a certain capabilities or a certain kinds of things that they are looking at or whatever else. So let me use an example and say that, let's say you are building, you're doing this work and your thesis is about, let's say, building maybe a better personalized solar panel for home use or whatever else, right? So something like that. And you might say, okay, next generation electric scooters, this, that, I'm going to use solar panels. I'm just making this up. But first thing you look at is who is your customer segment? Are they businesses? Are they individuals? Are they home users? Are they office workers? So you don't look at just customers as everybody can buy my thing. You segment it into different groups and look at what they may be looking at. Then you think about the value propositions. Then you look at how do you as a company interact with the customers? Do you meet them on, do they come to your store? Do you go online? How are your channels? So that's how you decide how the value proposition reaches the customer. And then the other side, then you look at partners, activities, and resources. So these are the three on the other bucket. Then you look at where are you going to get the money from and what is it going to cost. So this is really a one-page chart in which people are able to make decisions on how it goes. So I was able to look online and I found a thing for Airbnb. So the customer segmentation, they say, is that we are not going after the hotel market. We are not going after every traveler. We want to look at budget travelers, leisure travelers who are looking for people who are additional income, and also those who are looking for unconventional stuff. They don't want to live in a hotel. They want to live in a home. So what is the value proposition that they get? It's a simple booking process, things like that. So this is how you build out your own business model. And this is very illustrative and gives you a good sense on how to go about it. PK, is making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Please continue.
So this is a very common standard thing. And anybody who is trying to do this, the first step you do is you build your own business model. And if you go online, you'll see them for Uber and LinkedIn and other things. Then I'm going to share a little bit of the concept of what lean manufacturing is and how it came around in terms of what Eric Ries, who really made it a big thing. It's called a lean startup. His point was, what happens today is that when you try to build a product, let's say you built a product, you want to build something like the solar panel, if you go build the whole thing and then try to sell it, and you might find that it doesn't meet the requirements because people have small homes, they need to fit in this room, it needs to be horizontal, whatever the equations are. Trying to build it out, build the whole thing, and then finding out that the product doesn't make sense is really a waste of time, waste of money, and waste of everything else. So what Eric Ries and his team started to work on is to create a business framework where they said, don't go and just go build everything one shot, build, measure, learn. Okay, this is sort of the overall theme in which they started to work on, saying that, build something, show it around, then come back and then measure. Now, so this is the framework. The book talks about it as build the product, measure the data, and learn from ideas. But what has happened is that over the years, this has kind of a little bit evolved into saying that build experiments. So before you go and sell, okay, I'm going to go make this solar panel and I'm going to manufacture 10,000 of them, build an experiment, try out 5 different ones, show it to people, let them try it out, baseline it as to what exactly is the expectations from it, which is what is referred to as a minimum viable product. And I'm going to explain that in the next slide. But that's really how you build your experiment. Once you have that, you measure. Is it delivering good results? Are customers willing to pay it? What price are they willing to pay? What kind of things are they likely to look for? What are the constraints or criteria that they would use for measuring these things? So measure the metrics. And finally, at every stage of this, you have 2 options. Either you preserve what you have done and build off of it, or you pivot saying, okay, sorry, I didn't work out. Let me try something else, right? So this is really how you do this. And this is what this is all about, is saying that you build experiments, you baseline them, measure the metrics, analyze it, learn whether you pivot or preserve, and then go back and revise your hypothesis and go build some more experiments. So this is the loop that you need to keep trying. And I'm going to come to the next part after this slide, which is who is part of the loop. It's the customer who needs to be part of the loop. And that is what Steve Blank talks about in his theory. But let me explain a little bit about the minimum viable product. And the context of the minimum viable product, people get into a little bit of a confusion on minimum. It's not about minimum, it's about viable. So you have to build a least product which answers these 2 questions repeatedly. What are my riskiest assumptions? Can I eliminate them by trying these experiments? And what is the smallest experiment that will help me eliminate what I'm doing? Now, this is a theory that the PhD students get very well, right?
Yeah.
This is what your PhD student is all about. Find out what your riskiest assumption is. Make sure you have it squared off. Maybe get a publication out of it. Even if it is a base thing, you get a baseline on it. So nobody can steal your idea from here. And then, don't go around building all kinds of useless things that have no relevance, which is not contribution. Get that riskiest assumption clean and then make that smallest experiment, validate it. Once you're good, try again. Then you keep building more and more and go after the big thing, right? So this is really what it is. The viability is the key in this. It's not about the minimum. It's about the viable, the least viable product. The viable is important. And then the Steve Blank has this whole thing, which has a really important story that he talks about, is get out of your building, okay? Don't sit in a classroom or a room and just make all these assumptions about, oh, my solar panel is going to be this and that and all that shit. Go to the customer, show it to them. Don't sit inside your building. Get out of your house, go talk to customers. And I think PhD students should also do that with their research. You're building something for a group of community. Show it around. Talk to people about it. Let them see what it is, right? So there are no facts inside your building. So get the heck out and talk to customers. And what are you trying to do? So first part of what you're trying to do is to search. Is this a problem worth solving? Is this a solution that is, that you have built? Is this contraption really the solution that people are willing to buy? Can you sell this solution? And can you build it at the right price so you can make money out of it? So these are the first parts of this thing that you keep circling around till you pivot. You get it right. Then you say, okay, now I have it. Can I repeat the selling of the solutions? Can I sell at scale? And can I build this at scale? That's what your business is all about. And you need to bring the customer in the mix of doing all of this stuff. And this is really the crux of what lean manufacturing is. There are various looks around it. There are lots of books that talk about it and various other things. People have incorporated design thinking, lean and agile all go together. But I think this discipline of how you build lean manufacturing and lean startups, I think is extremely relevant for PhD students, even for their PhD work, right? I mean, you don't want to go and say, okay, I'm going to do sit in one room, decide whatever. If you're building a security solution, better try it out, see if it works. Find out the hardest problem that you're trying to solve, implement it, deploy it. And if you see that it's working, then you know, okay, fine, my crux is working. I'm going to do this homomorphic encryption, blah, blah. Does it work fast enough for doing my job? Whatever it is. So that loop is what you are trying to build up. Right. So I'm taking a short question from you, PK. You seem like you want to ask something.
No, I think one comment and then a question. One comment is that I think the cycle that you showed, build, measure, learn, it perfectly fits probably the PhD life also. Even the word hypothesis there is very, very PhD-ish, right? You kind of build some experiments, collect some data, make some measurements, learn from it, update your hypothesis. Yeah, I was just connecting to how you're doing an entrepreneurship session, but it looks, yeah.
This is exactly the training.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to make is that the entrepreneur training that you are talking about, the training is best for PhD students. PhD is basically giving you the training for being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, yeah.
And my question.
Yeah, and my question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was, so I don't know whether this is the right point, what is the transition that you're doing, but the question is how to pick a PhD problem, right? How to assess, meaning market, how do I, meaning is this something that I have to keep in mind when I'm deciding the problem, or I work on something and then I say that, okay, let's go to, what's your thought on picking the problem and going to the market?
So I have a little bit of a different point of view than many people. My belief is that the PhD is a degree. You should do the least effort that your advisor is willing to finish your PhD and get the fuck out of there. Okay. And then once you have your degree, nobody asks you what your degree was all about. And it's a degree which is useful. It's giving you the training that is very important. And while you are doing this training, and I'm going to give you an example, this segues me beautifully to this particular thing about they call it the JTBD's sort of theorem, or not the theorem, but the framework. And I'm going to show you jobs to be done is what it's all about. So I'm going to explain to you what that is. So what I'm trying to tell you is that whether you are trying to do a PhD problem or you're trying to do a business, you have to find the problem. Now, the customer for that problem when you're building a business is a business that will make money for you. The customer for your PhD thesis is your advisor who will sign your PhD thesis. That's the only difference, but everything else is the same. Now, as you look ahead and you keep going through this journey, you will find out how to bring this up. And I want to take you with this segue into the Clayton Christensen work. Okay, Clayton Christensen is unbelievably amazing, highly productive. He has written lots of things about life, innovation, disruption, and everything. So anything you can read from Clayton Christensen, highly go for it, right? So this is a theory or framework that he has. It's called the jobs to be done framework. I'm going to explain an example here. So his point is that every individual in a business is trying to delegate certain things that he's doing to the job that he's doing. So he wants to hire a product to solve his problem. And I'm going to give you the example that he talks about it because it's the least intuitive of all the examples that you can think about. So in that particular paper that he talks about and in various other places, here's a 4-minute video as well on this topic. He talks about the milkshake thing. So he says and he mentioned McDonald's in some places, but essentially he was consulting with this McDonald's guys on milkshakes. And he said, well, what is milkshake, which one works, whatever. And so as they say, their goal is to sit and observe, focus on the job, not the product. The job meaning what is the job that I want to get done? And it's a process, okay? It's a process, it's not a solution that you're looking for. Think about this. So now he said he had a consulting gig. He was working with McDonald's, trying to figure out, how to improve their milkshake, right? So he's sitting in a milkshake and looking at when do people buy milkshakes or whatever else. And he found that most people bought milkshakes early in the morning, before 8 in the morning. And they came alone, they picked up the milkshake thing, walked away and went to the car, or it was a drive-in, and they picked it up and drove off with it. So the question is, why are they doing this only in the morning? Why don't people drink milkshake in the evening or whatever else? So they realized that this was a commute activity for them. It was the breakfast during the commute in the US. that got them thinking about the milkshake. And the question was, okay, if I'm doing it for milkshake, for drinking it for my breakfast during my journey to the office, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, what could I have done instead if I were not doing this? So he gives these examples of saying that I did a banana, right? But I eat a banana, 30 seconds, it was done. And then I had mess all over the place. I took donuts, but they are kind of a little guilty that you eat these donuts in the car, and then it creates all this mess on your shirt and in the car. It's kind of a little bit horrible. You can have a bagel, but bagel is also pretty tasteless. And Snicker bars, man, it's good, but how long will they last, right? So this particular milkshake is kind of thick. It sits with a straw in it. It sits in my car. I drink it slowly over a period of 20 minutes, which is my commute, right? So it's a fantastic kind of breakfast plus my commute companion for 20 minutes. So the milkshake is being outsourced for the job of commuting with me. So that's how you look at these jobs to be done, right? That's the framework. So why am I trying to do this? Why do I get a milkshake? Not just the milkshake, I got something else, but I need the milkshake to be thick, gooey, it should last for 20, 25 minutes, and it should not create a mess, and it should be easy to check out after the end of my journey. Right? So once you sort of get that kind of a thing, then you sort of say, okay, what are the desires, limitations, catalysts, set of solutions? When you get them all right, you understand the context of why I'm going to use that product. That creates magic, and that's really what makes it very effective to work the solutions out. So this is really a big thing that people talk about, is that if you have a solution and you want to switch it, you have to understand the reasons for switch. That what are the problems with the current product? How do I make the new product so attractive? How do I change people's habits? How do I touch the emotional quotients on these kinds of things? So there is a whole lot of theory around how you sort of convert your problem into saying that when I'm in this situation, I want to do this so I can get something done. So you frame the problem in a certain way in which you say, okay, I'm looking at this context in which I'm solving the problem. I'm trying to achieve this goal, and this is the expected outcome. When I get this all right, you get magic, and that's when the product gets, becomes very effective. So this is what Clayton Christensen says. So let me just very quickly summarize, and I'm going to go back to this starting point of where I was and share with you this particular slide that, Steve Blank, and there's a lot of literature on this topic, and I spent actually an inordinate amount of time trying to distill it down to a few things. But the whole idea is that, just like a lean startup, you want to reduce waste, you want to do this stuff incrementally, you want to build, measure, and then analyze and then keep going on those 3 cycles that I shared with you. And while you are doing all of that stuff, you want to keep the customer in the mix, understand the job that the customer is trying to get done and be part of that job. And then finally, once you have this in a way, you put it down in a business model canvas, which explains to everyone and to yourself in one sheet, exactly what are you trying to do? What are the resources? What are the people? What are the things you're looking for? How is it all going to make money? And how can I keep repeating it again and again so that I can make a business out of it? So that's really what it is. I think the PhD thesis has very similar traits in a way. Many things are very common. The customer, quote unquote, is slightly different. The business model canvas needs to be there. I think it'll help for some of the PhD students to try to put that as that kind of a framework. And of course, it's an iterative process. You wouldn't want to do a PhD without having that every quarter, take a review every few months, make sure you're making progress and all of that. So PK, is it making sense?
Yeah, absolutely, Anand. Please continue. Yeah.
Anybody else have questions that you see that are compelling right now? Okay, so while you look around, okay, then you can come back and we talk about it again. So the next thing that is very important is the teamwork. If you're building a business, you need a team. It's a pretty tough job to create a business of your own, so you need to put a team together. Now, the thing is, a PhD thesis tends to be a lone job. Pretty much everyone is doing on their own, and it's not seen that much teamwork. But in computer science, actually, we do have a culture of labs working together and labs having many people, many students in that group, and the team sort of building things together and all that. So teamwork is very critical. And one of the things that I want to share with you is how do you build a team? And the way I'm going to do this is through an example of a beautiful book that I'm going to share with you, which I highly recommend everyone should read. And the whole crux of this is it's the mission that attracts the best talent. So if you have a compelling mission, I'm going to go solve the world's greatest problem. I'm going to have a man on the moon. So a mission of this kind is really, really what attracts the best people. And I cannot emphasize this even more, and I can say this for PhD students and PhD faculty members, is that if you create a compelling mission of the problem you are trying to solve, that is the best way to attract the best students. Everyone wants to be part of a very successful mission that was, I was part of the Man on the Moon mission. I was part of, whatever it is. So creating that compelling mission where you're going to change the world is really the key to getting the best team to come and work with you. Now, the book I'm going to talk about today, or from where I'm going to sort of share some of this stuff, is a book called Beyond the Summit, and it's written by a mountaineer called Todd Skinner. Okay, and the quote that I'm going to use from it is the mountain that will select the team. Basically, trying to make the point that if you have the right mission, you will get the right team to happen. And I'm not going to walk you through this story, which is there in this, why I've shared the slides with you. You should read this. But what he was trying to do is what I'm going to share with you in this one picture that I have on this slide. So the book is The Beyond the Summit. The author is Todd Skinner. The next thing that you see is Trango Tower. Trango Tower is a POK Karakoram region peak, okay, 20,000 plus. The thing is, the face of that peak is like you see right up there, straight up, okay, 3,000-4,000 feet right up, straight up. And just to give you a sense on how straight up it is, you see that red arrow that I have and black dots on that picture? I don't know if you
can. We can see that. Yeah.
It's good enough, okay? But you see those tiny people? Those are the people, okay? And this is what they are climbing. Flat face right in front of them. Okay, and the way these guys, specifically Todd Skinner and his team, climb is they are free scale climbers, so which means they don't use equipment for going up. They only keep equipment and ropes to ensure that if they fall, they don't die. Okay, otherwise they use only bare hands to climb. This is a 60-day climb that they did on this kind of a very hostile environment, climbing up this kind of a mountain on the peak where you sleep on the peak, basically on the flat surface on the thing for 60 days. Okay, it's pure craziness. Why would anybody do this shit, right? Meaning it's like, why would you do this? Right? But the fact is, because you want to do it, there are certain people who will come to you. If PK and I will not get invited to this mission. It's not us. Right? It's some other. But there are people who like doing such things, and they are the people you want. So once Todd Skinner announced that I'm going to go make the summit to Trango Tower, right? All of a sudden, people from all over came over and said, you're going to Trango Tower? No way I'm going to come with you. You're stupid. You're waste of time. I've done this. I'm not coming. But there were 4 crazy people who came with him and agreed to come with him, right? And this page here explains their story about how they came in. 4 guys. There were 4 young guys from Wyoming, 4 unrelated things, completely different from each other. And they came in. The guys are Steve Bechtel, Bobby Modell, and Mike Lilgren. And then Jeff Bechtel, who was Steve's brother. So all these 4 guys, plus Jeff, who said, I'll come along, but I'll be in the base camp. So whatever it is. So there is a bunch of these guys who agreed to go for this kind of pre-climbing setup. So this book actually describes this in phenomenal ways, how teams can get built. So how do you build a team? You cannot just go and say, hey, come and join my team, whatever. Why should I come to you? Why am I going to? No, I'm going to pay you a lot of money. Sorry, that doesn't attract the brightest people. So you have to tempt them with, oh, I'm going to go climb the Trango Tower. I want you on my team. Would you want to come? And if you declare that you're going to do the Trango Tower, people will come to you who want to be on Trango Tower. So that's really what it is. So this is the real, who was on the expedition. All team members want to badly climb the mountain. They all wanted to be there. There was a unified sense of mission that we were going to go, make this happen. This was very clear to everyone. Every person enhanced the team's chance of success. So everyone had a contribution to make. And lastly, you're looking for team members who are willing to begin without all the answers. And PK, you would relate to this. You don't want a PhD student to come and tell you, okay, so what problem am I solving? Oh, okay. But what will happen to my job if I don't make it? What happens to me if I finish it? Oh, will I get 3 publication? Will I get 5 lakh rupees a month? So all this bullshit you don't want, right? You want the guy to say, fuck, I want to come because I want to solve this problem and I want to do it because it's there, not because of anything else. I'm going to solve the problem because there is a problem to solve. I climb the mountain because the mountain is there. Mountain doesn't need me to climb it. I need to climb it because I believe that I must climb the mountain, right? So that's the passion that drives the people. That's what makes a startup happen. That's what makes the team happen. That's what the excitement is. And when you're part of such a team, right? That's the energy, the adrenaline, the excitement, and something you would tell your grandkids, is something you need that story to tell, right? If you don't have any of those things, I just go to work and come home, life's not fun, right? And this is exactly true whether you are doing a PhD or otherwise. Now, if you look at this book, right, now just imagine these guys came in from Wyoming. The highest ever peak in the US is 14,000 feet. The base camp here starts at 15, 16, and you're going up to 20, 22,000 feet. Nobody had ever been to the Himalayan region ever, right? So nobody has climbed this kind of a freestyle ever before, right? So you don't know how to do this. So it's not like I have done this 5 times, I have a resume. So this is very beautiful quotes that I thought I'd share. The mountain doesn't give a damn about your resume. Without hunger, both skill and experience will remain at the base camps. You've got to be really hungry for something. There's nothing more dangerous than a moderate mountain. Only an ultimate mountain can forge an ultimate team. The only guidebook to the mountain is the one you will write. And only plan that works is the one that works. The best plan is the one that works. So this is really what it is about. And if you're looking at a PhD problem or PK creating his own group, this is very important. You don't necessarily want people who are not hungry. You want people who are really hungry, and you want to do it because it is there. And that's really what this is all about. And that's how you put a team, and you bring into the team people you think how they think is more important than what they know, and pick teammates to what they will do and not what they have already done. So this is really the quick crux of how you build a team. The team is super important when a startup. And if you are going to be successful, you need to be part of a team that has a mission. So if you want to do a startup, you have to create a mission that is very amazing. And you can see this all over the times. If a cricket team has 300 runs to score in an ODI, or 200 runs to score in one of those 20 over matches, you will see that there is enough intensity and everybody tries to play well. When you have to score like 85, 200, 100 runs, 125 runs in these, 20 over games, you never know what might happen. So some crazy things happen because, we are always going to make it. That complacency just doesn't make it. So that exciting mission, right, is really what drives the highest levels of, whatever excellence you might call. PK, making good sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So one question that has come up in the chat, Anand, which is very relevant, probably we can just take that quickly if you want. How can we develop a mission-based for our PhD work? I think you're kind of suggesting that mission-based can be for the startup, but if somebody were to flip it and ask, okay, what can I do for mission-based PhD?
So, I believe that the best people are looking for mission-based work, right? So if someone wants to solve a problem that's, I just want to solve some problem, whatever. If that problem is compelling, it's exciting, it creates energy, it creates passion, it solves world's hunger, solves something big, it makes it far more interesting. So, and this is something that everyone needs to think about. And is, sometimes you make the PhD the mission, but whatever it is, unless you have a mission that drives you every morning, how can you come back to work, right? So you need that whole thing. And one of the things that always helps is that if you can see the context of your work, right? So if I see what I'm doing as something that's going to solve a big problem eventually, that makes it very exciting for me to be part of that mission. So it always helps to have a mission. Most of us, beyond the first few, whatever, you're not looking just to work for the sake of working. We are there because we want to make a difference. We want to make a huge mission happen. So it is the job of the leaders to convert whatever needs to be done into saying that, why is this important? What is the context? And how does it solve some important problems in the world?
Absolutely.
You relate to that, PK, right?
Yeah. Please continue. Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I think you're probably at the right slide for this question, I guess, which is the whole discussion about finance itself, right?
Right. So,
Meaning, yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I want to give you two books that I believe in. One of them is this: Every CEO Wants You to Know, What the CEO Wants You to Know. It's a beautiful book by Ram Charan. I'm a big fan of Ram Charan and all his books. But this is the beautiful book. It's a very small book. It's about 200 pages, less than that, actually, 150 to sort of pages. I read this on a plane once, and I was so impressed by it that I've distributed hundreds of copies of this particular book. Okay, and the other book is from my friend Ashok Porwar, and I'm going to share a few ideas from here. And what I'm going to share is some basic things that you should understand, that every business is by and large the same. The four things that matter about a business. One is that, are you satisfying the business customers' needs better than your competitors? Are you generating cash? Are you providing sufficient return on invested capital, invested assets, invested whatever, invested time in some cases? And then, are you growing? Those are the four key things for any business, right? So any business you're trying to do, you got to think about these four things. So what are these four things? So first is, you got to understand that you're building a business, which means you need to do better against your competitors, and you need to understand why the customers buy what you offer. This is the crux of every business. So why am I doing what I shared with you about the idea and all that? Is to make sure that you know what the customers want to buy, so that you can offer what the customer is looking to buy. So that's really the whole objective of how you want to do this stuff. All right. So now the 3-4 concepts I'm going to share with you very briefly. One of the most important cross concept is this thing called gross margin. The gross margin is basically revenue minus cost of goods sold divided by revenue, which means that this is the Ram Charan's example. It was in dollars. I converted it to rupees. But the idea here is that if I'm selling shoes like Ram Charan's family was doing in Kanpur, and actually they were in Agra. So he talks about this example. He says that, I buy shoes at 300 rupees, I sell at 500 rupees. I sell 1,000 of them, so 1,000 into whatever, and I can get 40% gross margin. So this is how you look at it. So I made total revenues of 500,000. I spent 300,000 in buying the things. I made a difference of 200,000 on the revenue of 500,000. So that's 40% gross margin. So this is an important concept to know. Gross margins are very important to compare things, right? Gross margin on its own is not useful in itself, but gross margin is used all the time to make comparisons. So you compare two businesses by comparing their gross margins. You compare two products saying, okay, I could do this or I could do this. I could do make ice creams, or I could make, let's say biscuits. What should I make? Well, what is my gross margin on ice cream? What is my gross margin on biscuits? They give you a sense of what you should do. I was doing a certain gross margin this year. Now I'm doing less or more. Am I doing better than previous year? So these are all examples of things you compare. The next important thing to know is that net income divided by total invested capital is return on invested capital. Very simple equation. The equation is that if I made 200,000 rupees, as was shown in the previous example, but to make that 200,000 rupees, I had to invest a lot of assets, build a factory, then what is my return on that investment? Or what is my return that I get from equity from shareholders? So these are examples of where you can find out what the return is. This is again very important. If someone is giving you money, and this is, everyone likes to say, okay, how can I go to the VCs and give money? Yeah, understand one thing. VCs give money if they can get that money back with a bigger return. So they are looking on return on investment, and they want the money back. Okay, they don't want the money in your business. So if you are going to a VC, you are always looking for a way to make money out of it. So that is very critical. And when you're looking at these, you have to look at return on investment on the investment that you're making. So if you take 5 crores from the VC, and you make a net income of, let's say, 50 lakh rupees, then you're showing them 10% per year. Okay, that's how you show that, okay, this is the return I'm going to give you. So you have to be able to show that. The most important factor in any business, again, this is something that the more sophisticated guys somehow don't get it, is about cash generation. He calls it cash generation, it's like cash flow. And the idea is that money comes into the business, some of it gets used, some of it remains. What remains is the cash that has remained after the business is done. When what remains in the business becomes zero, your business is dead. So it doesn't matter what profit you make. It is important that you have cash in the business. The cash flow is all about it. And it's a long example. I don't want to, you can read it, but it's such an amazing example that I thought I should share this. So this example is about Ram Charan. He took some of his MBA students to, by the way, he teaches at Harvard and various other places. He's an amazing speaker and very, very well known as a writer. So he took some of his students to Managua in Nicaragua for a thing, for a study tour. And they went to this kind of a clothes merchant, open market in Nicaragua. And they saw a lady who was selling something. He said, okay, where do you get the money from? So she said, I borrow money at 2.5% a month. So this wise ass said, oh, that's 30% of interest payments. And you only make 10% whatever margin. How will you pay this 30%? So no, it's not 30%, it's 34% because there's compound interest. Every month I'm paying 2.5%. So this is very important also. Compound interest is again another concept that humans don't get very well, but compounding is really what life is all about. But anyway, so she said 34%, right? 34%. And then the guy says, okay, 34%. Then how do you make it work? What she's saying is it's about turns. I buy every day, I sell, there's a little bit of money I make, and I keep accumulating it every time. How often do I turn it is where the key is. When I look at restaurants, restaurants make money on turns. I have the same table. How many people sit on it during the day and how much do I make profit per table in one turn, and how many turns can I run during the day, right? That's really what the business is all about. It's not just about the profit and loss. It's about the velocity and turns. It's a very important concept, cash flow, velocity, turns, and these kind of things. And return is a function of the velocity of it. It's a beautiful book, very small, very easy to read. And you have to understand that when you run out of money, you are bankrupt. Okay, this is the end of story. So you can be making a loss or a profit. Like for example, Amazon has never made a profit for, now they have started to, but till say 5 years back or 3 years back, they never made any profits. They're always making a loss. But they had cash. They had millions of billions of dollars of cash in their bank, right? So that is the key. So as long as you have cash in the system, you are alive. When the cash is out, you're out of business. So normally, you'll make a list of these kinds of things and you compare with each other, saying that how am I doing with sales, gross margin, net profit, velocity, and all of these things. And these are things you got to be aware of. And I sort of go further and say that every PhD student must understand these concepts, because at the end of it, PhD is all about return on investment. I'm investing my time, I'm investing on my energy, I should get return out of it. Otherwise, what's the point in doing what I'm doing? So any of these things are very important to understand. And I want to last things mentioned here is the 8 financial doctrines that my friend Kurwa talks about, which are kind of relevant and interesting. One is that the past does not matter. Look into the future. And this is the whole concept of sunk cost. So the story is I'm drilling, in a particular thing. I've gone, 100 feet down, and now should I keep going? Everyone will tell you, no, you're already 100 feet down. Why not keep digging more? But maybe you have reached 100 feet. There's no more to dig. Why bother, right? Move somewhere else. So when do you walk away from something versus keep at it, right? This is really the key of what this whole thing is all about. Money has time value. So money now is worth a lot more than money later. And this is to do with the present value of money. Return is proportional to risk. It doesn't matter how you slice the cake if the cake remains the same size, right? So if all you're doing is dividing the cake, it's not very good. You have to grow the pie. And there's no point in doing something investors can do for themselves. And then nobody's going to give you money and say, take my money and play with it. They're expecting you to make more money out of it. And you cannot make money on what everybody knows is all well known, and insiders know more than outsiders, and actually nobody knows anything, especially the experts. Okay. And the last thing that I want to mention here is that sunk cost is the cost that has already occurred. And sunk costs are independent of an event that can be considered when making investment or project decisions. And I want to finally end this discussion here, and then I'll open it out for questions, is that your PhD is your sunk cost. It's done. Once your PhD, you got your PhD. What you do in the future is going to matter more than what your PhD was all about. So don't feel too bad if your PhD does not become a business problem. Maybe something else will. So I want to just conclude by saying that, as PhD students, you have learned amazing skills. You understand what it means to kind of do the same process that an entrepreneur does. You have the best training to be an entrepreneur. You also have a good understanding of high tech, next gen tech, and all of the tech stuff that you're doing, which is really going to be the cornerstone of next generation business and revenue and value generation. And this is sort of where one of the books that I mentioned to PK just before you all came in was a book on Naval Ravikant, who talks a lot about this whole point that it's the science that is going to drive the next generation of things and all that. So PhDs have real stuff that they can bring into the game, which nobody else can. So, this is sort of where it is. And the last thing I want to mention, which I mentioned earlier on, is that, hey, you PhD guys, don't waste jobs that are meant for mere mortals. Do something big, do something meaningful. You have really invested your life in it. See the returns. And the returns are not going to come from your PhD thesis that you have done. What you have done is done. It's your sunk cost. What you do from what you have learned is what's going to take you forward. And that's what you should be thinking about. Go do your own, and I'm very sure you'll be successful on it. So I'm going to stop here in terms of the prepared, presentation. I'll leave the slide here, or we can cut off the slides. Anyway, you have the slides. Let's go into a free-form question till PK, you say we need to stop.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Anand, for that formal side. But I think one question that I was wondering, Anand, when you were speaking, that you gave this example of biscuits and milkshakes, right? At some point in time, you said that biscuits or milkshakes, what do you want? So how do you, I mean, as PhD students, we're generally looking at a topic and then trying to do work on that. And then if I have to do a startup, I generally think of in that area. But your perception seems to be saying that, look, PhD gives you skills, go do a startup in anything. What happens to all the hard work that I do in a topic?
No, two different things. I'm not saying run away from the topic, but I'm sharing with you a discipline on how you find the problems that you need to find, right? So you have demonstrated, let's take an example. So you built a very fancy, let's call it AI machine learning solution for something, pick whatever you want to call it, right? Just 1 minute, I'm going to pin you. All right. So what happens is, let's say you pick up some machine learning problem or some, let's pick a problem. So you are able to do some great machine learning to find radiology images or whatever else that you need. So it's great skill. You understand that is useful, okay? You found an algorithm that solves certain problems. That may not be sellable in its own, right? So you have to build a business that might include that or something related to that. And while you are finding a solution, you might find out that the radiology images are fine, but you know what, MRI images are better, or even better, I can take this imaging expertise I have and look at astronomy data because that's where the money is, right? So this is all fine to do. Why get stuck on it? Yeah. There is a process. You have learned certain social, emotional capabilities and skills of persistence, context awareness, technology, tenacity, all those things. You have a starting point of certain areas at which you have built something. You don't know if it's a marketable problem, but there is a process to find out. So you keep going, finding out. And as you go through your process, you might find something works better than what you have done so far. At that point, you have to take a pivot. Now, how do you take a pivot? Well, I spent 5 years doing just, image processing and medical stuff. I just have to stay there versus saying, okay, I did that. I see that the opportunity from here on in the astronomy images is so much better. I might as well flip into it. Or I might say, no, I got to find a different set of people I need to talk to so that I can get better view on it. So these are all decisions you make. And what I'm trying to tell everyone is that, guys, there is some cost issue, right? At every point of pivot, when you have to make that pivot, you have to make a decision that says, okay, is my past. See, there is no such thing as wasted things. Okay, so the experiments I did that failed are not necessarily a failure. And that's what Edison mentioned very dramatically, right? Saying that
it's 4 o'clock.
99% of the failures are really what makes my 1%. I know I have eliminated 99 options or whatever else, right? So this is really what it is all about. So you have to understand that you keep moving and you pivot.
Yeah, sure. So one question that has come in the chat, I see Akshay also raising an. Akshay, if you can post your course question on the chat, that will be useful. We can get you also speak. But Anand, here is a question: which is more important for a startup to focus on during the first years? It also looks to me that there are a few people who are already entrepreneurs who are on the call. So these questions probably may be coming from them. Which is more important for a startup to focus on during the first few years, growth or revenue?
Survival.
Yeah, Subhrajit, he gave you a third option. So
no, absolutely. See, growth and revenues are, I think, two unrelated things at the moment. When you are in the first few years, you want to make sure your proposition is right. One doesn't have to be crazy about revenues or growth in the early stage of the business. You have to build the infrastructure and the setup so that you can eventually make both revenue and growth happen. It's not one or the other. So first round out, you have to survive, make your value proposition right, make your customers happy, and then you repeat. And as you get to the next or third level, then you sort of say, okay, how do I expand, make the growth happen, and how the growth will generate more revenues.
Yeah.
Growth without revenue doesn't make sense, and revenues without growth doesn't make sense. So they are not mutually exclusive.
Sure. So one question about timing, Anand. Let's talk a few minutes about just the timing of when to think about PhD or startup itself, right? I do this PhD work, 2-3 years, I spend some time. Totally 5 years is what I think, 5 to 6 years is what it takes for me to finish my PhD. So what's your recommendation about when do I start thinking about this?
See, what I'm trying to suggest here is that some of the techniques that I shared with you, like jobs to be done and some of these sort of iterative methods, are things you should incorporate in your PhD as well. So if you find a problem while you're going through your iterations and you find that your customer actually can be a much bigger customer than the customer that you have on your PhD student, then maybe that's the time to jump. So if Bill Gates really found, or for that matter, Zuckerberg realized that what he was doing in Facebook would have been far better, long-term, bigger impact for him, and waiting would not have helped him finish his degree. He moved on and dropped off and kept going on. What I'm trying to tell everyone here is that there is an entrepreneurial mindset that is relevant and important, whether you are doing a PhD or not doing a PhD, and while you are doing a PhD too, what you need to do. You should jump and start your own business as soon as you have a problem that can have a real result in it. So what happens is, and this is the reality, is that when you are in a PhD mode, your mind is not open to ideas that might have commercial impact. So as soon as you finish, you start to find out that, yeah, maybe now I can see this value where I can start talking to that. And it might involve, talking to some people, working for someone, and then figuring it out. But unless you have the real idea on what's going to take it, and you have the courage and the guts to go after it, you wouldn't want to jump. So I don't think there is a timing issue. And this doesn't end at 40, 50, 60, 70. You can do a business at any age you want. As soon as you have a compelling motion and compelling idea and can go make it happen, then go for it.
Sure. So this is a more philosophical question. I don't know whether it came up in any of these questions, but as you were speaking, I was thinking that, so there's this philosophy, right? You also just now mentioned actually entrepreneurship mindset. So can that mindset be trained, or is it something that people just should have it? What's
No, I think these are very standard techniques. I think there are techniques that I mentioned. Everybody can become an entrepreneur, and I believe everybody should become an entrepreneur. And as I see forward, in the context of jobs, I think the gig economy is here to stay. If you look at a world where everyone is a gig on its own, everyone is running their own gig, you are going to become an entrepreneur for life always. And the way I look at this happening is that you become a gig worker. The employer who hires you is your customer, because he's going to hire you for a duration of a project. At the end of the project, you are going to be asked to leave, go find something else. You're going to go find the next gig, right? So this whole concept of, imagine you don't have permanent jobs, because that's what the reality is going to be. So if you are looking for a job and say, okay, I'm going to go join Microsoft Research and stay there for 30 years. Sorry, that's not life. It's eventually going to be head for a project. And you run out of funding, you'll be asked to go. You'll have to go find another set of funders who fund your ideas.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a question from Akshay. Which is more important while starting, building a prototype or building a team? Like if you can build a demo prototype. Yeah. The question is about building a team versus building a prototype.
See, like as I said, all of these are not sequential activities. Just because I had to put them sequentially in a slide deck, that doesn't mean they're sequential. So a lot of these things happen in parallel, right? So you are defining the mission. The mission is evolving as you go around talking to more and more people. As soon as the mission starts to become compelling enough, people start getting attracted to you. On the other hand, there may be to you and your friends who are already working together, and together you decide to make this big mission happen. So this is it's an amorphous activity that happens in parallel at all times. So yes, this is not a sequential, I follow one to the other.
Sure. So the next question about persistent itself, you decide whether you want to take it, but this is the question about why did you think of starting persistence in India, not in the US? And so to say, how does one decide similarly now why one should opt for starting a company in India?
Because we are Indians, right? That's really this is our country. So if we have to do something, might as well do it in our country. What's the point in doing anywhere else? So why did I do persistent in India? Because I wanted to come back and I want to live in India. What's the point in living somewhere else? So my approach right now is that, hey, it's our country. If we don't make something out of it, who's going to do it for us? We have to do it. So that's the reason for why I came back. And I sort of believe that there is no shortage of opportunities. There is no reason why we need to be not in India. And if you guys are in India, we are all in India, we are talking in India, why not work in India? I mean, why go somewhere else?
Yeah, okay. So the next is about the team itself. I think you kind of talked about generally team, but the question of, I've had some students who have interacted with me, I think both at the undergrad level, at the PhD level also, this importance of co-founders, right? What's the, so to say, chemistry that should work? What should we look for when we're looking for co-founders?
So exactly what I was sharing was about co-founders. And my point is that, when you want co-founders to work with you, you want co-founders who are working together towards solving a mission. Who are attracted.
Yeah, mission. Yeah.
Rather than being attracted by saying, how much money you're going to pay them or what equity they're going to have or whatever else, right? So if you get a team that is hungry, that is agreeable on getting to the end goal, they all complement each other. So there was a slide that I had in that deck regarding, what was that team about. So his points was very clearly, one is that, we all agreed on the mission. We all were together in that mission is what he mentioned, saying that we are in it together. Yeah. And then everyone was complementing each other. So you want to climb the business, you want to get that mission. So for that mission, you need a mix of people who need to get to that mission. So you need in your team people who have the right mix. You don't want people to be all, I can do the job that you can do and you can do the same jobs that I can do. Then what's the use of having two of us? One of us is good enough, right? Mm. So you don't want situation which has 10 wicket keepers in your cricket team. You just need one of them. So a little bit of balance is important, and that's sort of what this was all about.
Sure. So this question has come up a couple of times, but I'll just abstract it and see how we can take it. So this is about just funds, right? Doing a startup, we need money, right? So what are your suggestions on or recommendations for PhDs to look for, how to go about finding funds for starting a company?
Yeah, so what I find that in India right now, there is no shortage of funds. I think more funds than the number of good startups in the market. So that's first thing. Second thing, I think a lot of what needs to come in first is the problem that you're trying to solve. The customers who are going to solve that work with you. And many times the customers will help you find the money as well, because they're really interested in you solving that problem so that the job that they're looking for to be getting done is happening, right? So so money will happen once you have the right team and the right work to go after it. And in general, there is no shortage of funds, so to say, in India. And if you look at the stock market, that's an example, right? So you see the market, there's a lot of money around in India. It just doesn't have the right people to take it. Now, everyone thinks that is building a startup that, oh, I'm building this great startup, so people should give me money. Question is, if I give you money, how am I going to make more money out of it? And why should I give it to you and not someone else, right? So the key is that when an investor is investing, let's say, 2 crores in any business, he's looking to make 10 times that much in a reasonable point of time and have the ability to take that 20 crores out of the business. So unless you are able to show me a way that, my 2 crores is going to become 20 and I'll give that 20 back to you. Not that you will have 20 crores worth of ownership in my company. I'm not interested in that. In 5 to 10 years, I need that money back. So that's really what it is all about. So if you are able to make a compelling solution like that, you'll get the money for doing it.
Sure. So this is, I think, connecting the PhD problem versus society. So there's a lot of emphasis on solving societal problem these days, right? Many institutes are talking about. Professors have also, many professors have started thinking about, look, we need to do something, take it to the society, all that. So when you think of PhD work and let's take the startup, do you see any connections with this societal thing? Because I think traditionally PhD work has been very focused on just solving a problem, right? Not the society was not added to it in the past.
No, that's correct. So as I said, the PhD problem, the objective of the PhD problem is to get your advisor to sign your thesis.
Yeah, okay.
Professor is working on societal problems and he thinks societal problems are a good way to get your PhD and you are aligned with that mission. By all means, you should do a PhD that aligns with your mission, your professor's mission, and his willingness to sign your thesis. Now, when you get into the other one, whether you're saying you're doing a business out of it, of course, society problems is the problems for which society is willing to pay for to some extent. And if you're looking at a business, clearly, as long as you make cash flows happen or some investor is willing to make you the money, yeah, you should work on society problems as well. So yeah. I think there's not that much of a difference between one or the other. I think it is important for products to be relevant, solutions to be relevant, to have a financial ecosystem to support it. And in some sense, the advisor ecosystem is very important to support the degree granting situations that are there in the PhD program,
sure,
which you can talk more about. People.
Yeah. So the other question is, so I don't know your insights on this. Venkatesh is asking it, but how much of my research will be owned by the institute if I start a company? I think that also is there, right? Yeah.
You may not.
Yeah, but that's so so I wanted to pose it to you and then give my thought. I think Venkatesh it's like the whole spectrum, right? Every institute has their own policies. I think you should look at which institute you're from and then take it forward from there.
But if you have to share a bit with the institute, it's okay.
Yeah. So Hemangi asked this question, Anand, which is, several startup gets observed by bigger companies in future. What's your opinion on this? Is this a sign of success or failure?
See, there is no such thing as failure. Okay, it's always a success, and getting acquired is also a success. Now, let me come back to this failure point. What is exactly failure is a function of what the perception of failure is in the society. Hey, every time, so take sports as a great example. So every time somebody gets out, is it failure? Well, everyone is going to get out someday, right? Sometime. So it's not, everything doesn't have to be a failure. Everything is also an opportunity to learn. So getting acquired actually is a very good thing. It gives you a chance to, say, okay, fine, I'm done. I collected some return out of my investment over the last few years. Now I can move on, do next one. So getting acquired is I think a success in many ways.
Sure. Okay, great. I think we can stop in 2 minutes. I'm going to take a picture, Anand, if it's okay.
Yes.
Let's do a picture, and then I'll get others also to join in with the camera. But for now, you and I are on the spotlight, so let's take a picture. Okay, thanks. So for people, whoever wants to switch on the camera and show up on the video, please switch on. We can actually quickly do a picture, and we can stop. So I will also remove ourselves from the spotlight so everybody can be on the picture. Yep. So many more people on the gallery. Let's do the gallery view. Very nice to see many people. This is the only way we can get to see people out now. Colorful backgrounds, colorful. Otherwise, we are all talking to just our own laptops. Hemangi is also, this is the same Hemangi of ACM. So nice Hemangi. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I'll take a picture. Okay.
Where are you, Hemangi?
So I will just take a picture. Count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thanks, Anand, for your time again. Thanks for taking. So I put the slides. So I will also put I'll stop recording now, but I